Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host, HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today, it was only a matter of time because I think we've been talking about doing this for how many years now?
It's popped up in and out quite a few times. We have referenced it and mentioned it, and we have yet to do it, and we're finally doing it.
So I think if you're listening to this podcast, you know what this show is. There's no reason to even introduce it, but because it's Avatar: The Last Airbender. If anyone asks, one of the best shows ever made, period, bar none.
I don't disagree. Like it's rare to find a show that has, in my opinion, so few bad episodes, right? And even the
Hmm.
bad ones are still like good, right? For the most
Yeah.
part.
Mm,
Like it's
I
rare to
let's
find that.
if to jump a bit ahead, one of the notes I have for myself is that yeah, when you look at it, season one is the weakest of the show, but at the same time, it's still great, and there are shows which would die for their best season to be as good and of quality as this show's least good season.
Especially for as long as this went too, right? Like cuz that's
Yeah. This is 20 episodes.
well, even that, like 3 seasons each of like 20 episodes or so as well. So
Season 3 is 21, but yes. But I guess for history's sake, uh, not going to be such a leap to assume that yeah, we both love the show. We think it's great.
nah, I hate it. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, but you know that you just praised the to hell and back, so it's not you can't really pull that. You're too late to the punch, buddy.
Nah, I take it all back. No, it's an
Well, but
amazing show. It genuinely is an amazing show.
yeah, do before we actually get into it, do you remember how you were introduced to it?
Oh man, you're talking 2005, by the way, is when this released.
Yeah, like
Going
for
back
the record, this show is like 19 years old. That's fuck. I'm
almost
old.
20, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think I remember seeing commercials, yeah, back when that was more of a thing on TV for Nickelodeon for the Nickelodeon channel. I was like, huh, this is interesting, and it had a vibe to it that I'm like, I'm interested in this. I want to watch this, and like I watched it as it released and aired on Nickelodeon originally, and yeah, just fell in love with it, and I like watched it every episode as it released.
Hmm. Yeah, so kind of the same here, but I guess here there was this thing because, as you know, don't live in the I'm not living in the US. But what was interesting is when we got Nickelodeon, you know, the only Nicktoon which we had dubbed, like a local dub for, was SpongeBob. Everything else was just original English dub with subtitles.
Mhm.
And then suddenly they started advertising this show, and they make it permanent that they are going to dub this, and they did. The entirety of the show is dubbed. So this was the second show that local Nickelodeon actually took the effort to dub for locals. So it was a big deal when it came here.
Hmm.
So I guess you could say I was like, oh, they actually want to dub this. Like they are treating this as if like it's an ace card.
Mhm.
And which got me curious. And then I was so curious about it that I missed the first episode when it aired. What can you do? But I happened to land on the second episode, and I was hooked from there.
Fair.
So it's so interesting to look at us because it's one of those shows that like today you are kind of expecting a show to be like Avatar in a way, to the point that you're comparing. Oh, it's kind of like Avatar.
It
Oh,
set
it's
a
kind of like
standard.
Avatar. But hmm?
It set a standard.
Yeah, because when it came out, I don't want to necessarily say it was new in a way, but I think it was a bit different than, at least in terms of quote unquote Western animation. And for the record, regardless of what your opinions on the matter are, we are not going to settle the debate of if Avatar is an anime or not. I'm not getting into that. Not opening that closet.
Well,
I'll say this: if you think it's an anime because it follows tropes and stuff, fine. If you think it's not an anime because anime is only Japanese animation, fine. I'm not going to get into technicalities about that. It's a great show. That's what's important. Moving on.
that's fair. But I do want to say, right, I think it is, or definitely is close to like that first example of Western animation and like taking from like some of the tropes and ideas of Japanese anime, right, and kind of applying it to a Western standard and running with it. I think this is. I don't know if it's the first, but I think it's pretty close to it. Like,
It- I'll say, because one thing that I've seen people bring mention to, and in a way, this is kind of true to at least Nickelodeon, is that there weren't many Western cartoons at that time that like had an ongoing plot.
mm,
Like it will, like maybe there would be like a bigger thing, like when I'm looking at, stuff like the DC animated universe, for example, or like that. Maybe they'll have arcs, but you could watch any episode at any point, and it's the same formula, right? You have the lead hero taking on the villain of the week and stuff like that. There wasn't necessarily something like Avatar that you kind of need to watch every episode. Though, to be honest with Avatar as well, like you can watch an episode at any point and like you'll understand what's going on in the general sense. But the characters are traveling. There's like no episode is necessarily like the other in terms of what the plot is gonna be. There is continuity and it's kind of important to keep track. And yeah, I want to say not a lot of Western cartoons did that at the time. It was a new thing.
yeah, I agree. Especially, and going back to your point of like a lot of Western cartoons were very kind of more episodic and everything. Yeah, I would agree with you. Like Avatar, you didn't fully need to follow it, especially in the first season. You could kind of still keep up even if you missed an episode or two. But I'd say later seasons, like it was important
Like
to know.
season two is where it became a lot more,
Yeah.
where it became a lot more necessary to keep track. Because I've seen somebody make the argument that in a way Danny Phantom was the Nicktoon that opened that door,
Hmm.
because there was a bit of continuity between episodes. Like, if something happened in episode number so and so, it would affect future episodes. Like there would be some sort of a continuity to keep track of. But it wasn't as, because to be honest, Avatar is one of those shows that I almost say you kind of need to look at it as a movie instead of episode by episode, while Danny Phantom isn't that type of show. So, okay, you know what? Maybe the best way to say it is that Danny Phantom was a step, Avatar was a jump in that direction.
I would say I would agree with you, and I think because Danny Phantom when it started and Avatar when it started are about a year apart, a little bit
Yeah.
less. So I
Hmm.
would say that like Danny Phantom became more like that right after Avatar started to release and everything and all that.
Hmm.
Like and Danny Phantom became more like that in its later episodes and seasons
Yeah, well,
or
yeah, again,
seasoning.
like with season two and three, rather than both shows also have three seasons. Only you could argue Danny Phantom lost its footing in the third season, but that's another story altogether.
Well, it's yeah, and that's partly because Nick's awful to their show creators.
Let's say whenever we do Danny Phantom, which is a possibility because I'm not sure if you heard, but that's getting a live action movie now. But
Did not know
yeah,
that.
no.
Wild. But
That's
hey,
people don't know what to do anymore, my buddy. We are like, I don't know anymore. Also, yeah, if it wasn't obvious, we're totally doing this because the remake is gonna come out. And before you say anything, no, there was no movie about Avatar: The Last Airbender. You were hallucinating. Okay, so basically, we
We
just
did
kind of
get that
talked about.
really cool. We did get that really cool, like, I don't know who those people were, but it was really stupid and it looked really silly. But I give them credit for trying, like, those fans, whoever they were, for making that, earth bending scene on YouTube or
You,
whatever.
you don't, don't, please. This is actually painful. It's painful. Here's the thing, it's painful because fans would do better than that fucking piece of shit.
Probably, yeah. Let's be
So that was awful, but we're not here to talk about it. For the record, though, love Avatar: The Last Airbender. We are obviously doing this
honest.
because the remake is gonna come out, and regardless how the remake is gonna turn out, we'll know when it drops. But what better time to go back and re-experience this amazing show? So in this episode, we're gonna talk about season one in particular. And since it's an old show and you most likely know it, I'm not even gonna bother with the spoiler tag. If you haven't seen the show, then don't listen to this. But then again, if you haven't seen the show, why did you even press on this? I assume you've already seen the show because
If you
it's
haven't,
been
go watch it.
it's been a part of this. It's been a part of pop culture for years now. Like
Mm,
I don't really see the point of hiding spoilers.
fair. I agree. Like, yeah, if you somehow clicked on this and haven't seen it, go find it and go watch it. It's worth your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I'm like it's what the time. Like I binged the entire thing. Might as well just say I kind of went. I kind of decided this was the time because like a month or so ago, I was just thinking, you know what? I am in the mood to rewatch the show, and I just, without even noticing, in like a week and a half, the entire show was done.
It's
I I just binged the entire thing in a week and a half, and then it's like, damn, it's over. So I binged Korra again, and that was over even quicker. So it's like,
it is
but
interesting though, because Avatar is definitely one of those. It's a very binge watchable show. It's a very good show to just get into, and you just kind of lose yourself to it, and then you look around. It's like it's 3 days later. What happened?
yeah, because to be honest, for at least for Aang, I have the entirety of the Last Airbender on a DVD, and what they do there is like at least for season one, it's like every disc is like 4 episodes, and for seasons two and three, each disc is like five.
Mhm.
So like it's essentially binging an entire row of episodes is like a 2 hour movie. So it's like you become okay. I have 2 hour. I have like a 2 hour. I have a free 2 hours. I'm watching this disc, and then it's like, oh, I have a bit more time. Great, I'll watch more. And before you know it, it's like, fuck. Where did the time go? Where did the show go? I'm having fun. What is
Mhm.
this? So basically, no reason to hide spoilers because you know. With that being said, um, let's start actually talking about this
Yeah.
and see. mm, So since this is one of those shows that it's not really episodic. I was debating if we should do it episode by episode or not, but you know what? I'll just say how do you think we should cover this? Try and go episode by episode, or just talk about the stuff that we want to talk about?
It's up to you. I think we can do either. Like, I'm fine with either. If you want to do it a little bit episode by episode, but if we jump around, we jump around.
Then something, since this is season one, then I just want to I this is one of the most unique shows in terms of the story. We said earlier that it's kind of, it's been inspired by anime or like that kind of thing and everything, and But to be honest, I don't recall a show before this which kind of have the same vibe. This kind of world, this kind of thing, but then I feel like everybody trying to do that, and everyone just points. Oh, so it's like Avatar. You get what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things of I think it's partially because anime around, especially around 2005 over here in the US and the West in general, I think wasn't quite as popular at that time. Like it was still gaining popularity, but it was very small and very slow. Like now you look around, everything's referencing anime. Everything, like everyone loves anime now to some degree, right? Because it's so much more
Mhm.
popular now. It's found its footing over here, but it took it a long time. And I think this show, one, helped a lot with that, but two, because that wasn't like a very common thing over here, because some of the stuff Avatar does, right? You can look back through older anime and they were already doing that. They were already doing like, this person has an air power and this person has earth power, blah blah blah. You get the idea. Like this wasn't new over there for them. But for us over here,
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of stuff doing that. It was new. Like we'd never seen
yeah,
anything
but
like this before.
that's the thing though that you say, that in anime the entire, this person has this power, I know it's not necessarily new there, but there was never like a thing that people had like powers based on the four elements, or that the four elements are like dividing the world, like there's this big world with different nations that each one controls a different type of element. What I mean by that is that worlds like this weren't necessarily a thing until Avatar came along, from what I noticed anyway.
No, I think that's a fair, opinion, right? I think that's completely fair to have, and I wouldn't disagree with it. It was definitely, if it was a thing, it was very rare to see it, right? Again,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember back, and it's like there's so much time there. I don't remember if there was anything before it, and there might have been, but again, it was a rare thing, like you're saying, if it was at all.
Yeah, because now I remember, I just remember that when I saw Frozen 2 with a few friends, maybe I mentioned this in the Frozen
Yeah.
podcast. As soon as Frozen 2 starts, and they say there were like the four elements, air, water, earth, and fire. Every In the two screenings I saw, there was a person who went, oh, like in Avatar. I remember that I saw Raya and the Last Dragon with a friend, which, by the way, Raya and the Last Dragon is a shit movie, don't see it. But I just remember that at the end we just came to this was basically an Avatar: The Last Airbender, crack fic, because there was something about the way this world was established that's very Avatar. And again, when we just say Avatar like this, you think some random person would think you think we are talking about the James Cameron film, but more and more people just when you say Avatar, they think about this show, they think about this franchise. This is it's a type of world that mm, they made something here. They made something that wasn't really a thing, and now influenced a lot of people,
I
which is impressive looking back.
that's one of the things I love though. I love that, like, hey, the Blue People film, that's really no, because it lost its name. It literally has had its name stolen by Avatar: The Last Airbender, because nobody says Avatar: The Last Airbender. They either type it out as ATLA or just Avatar, and everybody's like, "You're talking about the good one." Yeah, I'm talking about the good one, because I love how
Yeah,
I swear
it's
I've
like
had that conversation so many times, quite a few times, like with different friends. Right? You mean the good one, right? Yeah, the good one. Like, okay, and you just know, like, even though they're trying to make more actual, Avatar films with the Blue People, I think they've lost that war, right? Like Avatar is always going to
no.
be looked at as
Well,
this show.
considering how long did it take for the second one to come out, and
Fair.
apparently now the third one is delayed again because of the strike. you know, you know. I,
I get you. It's, but yeah,
and
it's
for so it's like I think it is kind of a common joke though to say that you're talking about the good one, right? And people know that you're talking about the cartoon. Which, by the way, I can't forget even. that because they didn't want to have any confusions with James Cameron. So when that piece of shit movie came out, they just made it The Last Airbender. But then you go to here, where that movie was called, and I shit you not, it's called Airbender, Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Interesting.
I shit you not. That's how they did it. Because here's the thing. I said like this. It sounds ridiculous, but like they
It
just
does.
wrote Airbender with the local alphabet, like it's just written Airbender as is, and then Avatar: The Last Airbender as the show was translated. It's it's so dumb. I can't. So, anyway, let's talk about it, I guess. So we were talking about this because of the world, right? I mentioned that
Yes.
no show really did this kind of world building, and I guess it's also important to note, like with fantasy, especially that in a fantasy world, you have the power to make the rules, right?
Hmm.
You can make the rules, and some fantasy stuff does kind of fall flat in there because you need to keep track of some of the rules that you establish, and not a lot of stuff do that. Like I love Harry Potter and everything, but there are some holes in that universe, right?
Hmm. Yeah. No, I get you.
There's a potion that can make you into someone else. It's like, all right. So
Yeah.
if I'm ugly, I'm gonna transform myself into someone else, right? What's stopping me? And there are just other kind of stuff there that's
Hmm.
like it's not perfect in terms of some things kind of contradict themselves ish.
Yeah.
And like but then again, every fantasy show kind of has that. I never really had any sort of like a quote unquote plot hole when it came to Avatar. Like everything is thought out in this world.
Well, even that, right? Avatar also builds upon itself really well. Like, since we're kind of
Hmm.
talking about the world, something in season one that, like, we spend a lot of season one. It's like, all right, the elements are cool. We have these cool animals going around and everything, and then you get to, where is it? What episode was it? Yeah, the winter solstice episodes, and then we finally
Hmm.
get to we get like those glimpses into the spirit world and everything. And I remember that episode and being like, whoa, wait, what? There's way more going on to this world than what I thought there was, right? At least that's how it felt
Yeah.
to me,
Hmm.
because that was an entire
Yeah.
different side of the world that we spent
It,
6 episodes just
because
kind of doing this stuff.
be- because they do keep mention of that the Avatar is supposed to be like this bridge that connects the two worlds, like the human realm and the spirit realm, and then suddenly you see what the spirit realm is like, and you're like, whoa.
Like, at that point, I think the only thing we had spirit wise was like, okay, Aang's connected to like his past lives. That's interesting. That's cool. Like, maybe they'll probably do more with that as we move forward, but we've not had any like major, thing going on with it, except for like maybe a few hints of Kyoshi here or there, right? And then you get to the
Hmm.
winter solstice in episode 7 and 8, and then it's like, no, there's a lot more going on to the spirit world than what we've shown you so far, right?
Yes.
Which is interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
even here, right, we still don't get a full glimpse of the spirit world until, like, I think season 2, I believe.
I'll
Or
say, how in recent years we've had the discussion a lot with a lot of shows when we say that season one gives you a glimpse and you can only really judge how good it is once you have the rest of the show to you know to to
compared to it.
contribute to it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, but then again, it still doesn't change the fact that I'm left with kind of a mediocre season. And if I need to watch more of the show, then how much of my time do you want? And but Avatar is one of those, it sets you up well for like more. That
Hmm.
there are obviously things that you're not necessarily sure about, and you're not necessarily aware of how they're gonna go and what's gonna happen. But at the same time, they give you enough. They give you enough Maybe it's because it actually has more episodes than a traditional season of a cartoon
I
has
mean,
these days.
thinking
But
back, right? Like looking back at it, you get to the later seasons. I mean, I guess it's fine if we talk about the later seasons, right? With the White Lotus and everything, and then you meet Jiang Jiang in episode 16 of this season, right? And it's like,
yeah,
holy shit! I can see the little references and the things they're doing and setting up here, and this it's the same with Boomy too, and him being a part of the White Lotus, right? You can see the little tidbits that are being shown there and shared there well ahead of time if you
yeah.
go back and watch it after knowing like, oh, these people are a part of the White Lotus, like
And
there's some stuff
we
here.
are not, and for the record, we are not gonna talk about this show for a bit. But if even if you jump to Korra, there are stuff that established here that and that's gonna
Mm,
be relevant to Korra to some degree.
yeah, no, like even there, like they I don't know if they planned it out that far ahead, but it you can see that.
Obviously not.
Well,
Obviously
at the
not.
very least, you
But,
can see that they remembered, hey, we've done these things. Let's pull back from that and pull it into like I love stuff like that. That's one of the reasons why, kind of getting a little bit off topic, but I love One Piece
mm,
because Oda, the creator of it, right? Like you can see he's created things way back at the beginning of the show, right? And hundreds of episodes later, or hundreds of chapters, thousands of chapters, even.
I was about to say, considering One Piece in its own is longer than both Avatar and Korra combined,
Yeah.
I this is impressive.
But yeah, like it's impressive to see a creator remember those things that they did so long ago and say, okay, we can pull back from that and we can add to that and we can use that again here now. Like I love stuff like that because it shows that you really care about the world you've created and you're super interested in it just as much as the people watching it are, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing I must give praise to, because in these kinds of shows, you have like the core cast. You kind of know like Aang is your is your upbeat, optimistic hero. I'm gonna save the world, and all of that. And you have Katara, who's like the shy but powerful, wise girl, and you have Sokka, the comic relief, and Zuko is the bad guy who wants to capture them. And all of these fall work in their respective roles, but then suddenly you get to episode 3 where suddenly this boy who's so happy-go-lucky all the time suffers an emotional breakdown when he finds out that his entire friends and family are dead, and that he's been he was off the world for 100 years, and suddenly all the people he knew are no longer alive. That's traumatizing, and they don't sugarcoat it. They show how much in pain he is.
Can we
And
also go ahead?
and
I'll let you
also
finish.
you see Katara. Like I said, she's very kind, very motherly in a sense. But you can see that she's still not trained, and she's prone to when Aang is getting water bending a bit better than her at some point. She does snap at him. She's not perfect and kind all the time. And you have Sokka, the comic relief. He's a well respected fighter. There's an episode where he actually completes his water tribe general test, and it feels earned. And he's not just there to throw jokes all the time. He's a person, a human being. And Zuko, do I even need to talk about Zuko? Like, Zuko, there's a reason Zuko is one of the most popular characters in this show. He doesn't say much, but his actions speak volumes. Like, and just the I can go on about these characters
No,
for, so
fair.
I'm
Well,
go.
it's even. I mean, going past that, right? Like, you see that from season to season, these characters change as well, and their journeys change also, and you get to see them grow even further. Like, it's done really well. But something I was gonna say, right, was that, eh, fuck, I lost it. I lost my train of thought. You got going, but no, it's one of those things, right? That just it's so well done, and seeing also, yeah, what I was gonna say, right? Aang's like 12, 13 years old. I
I
think he's
think
12.
12.
Yeah. Fucking how many times do you see a kid done that young in a show and it's not annoying, right? Like
Yeah,
that's so
because
rare.
I was also gonna say I think it helps that his voice actor was a legit kid. It wasn't, not to discredit, girls who do boyish voices, because there are a lot
Respect.
of them, and they're doing amazing jobs. But
Hmm.
I think the fact that it was a real boy, maybe helped it. And also because it does feel like maybe he had a bit more of an impact. Maybe I can say it a bit differently, or maybe I can do something differently, because sometimes the line could have been written completely differently, and then like the actor can come in and it's like, hey, can I maybe say it like that or something, and the creators can be like, yeah, sure, go for it, and maybe that's the take they're using. So I think the fact that it was an actual boy helps.
Well, probably good direction too, right? Because it
Oh
can
yeah.
be like
Well,
it can be hard to be
this,
a child actor, right? And get that and nail that right because there's a lot of stuff that you've not learned yet because you're still new essentially to all of it.
and
So props to
because you
them.
mentioned voice direction, this is not the first show, and certainly not the last show that we covered that has been directed by this lady, but Andrea Romano, one of the best. She directed the DCEU,
Mm.
and Teen Titans technically counts, but Teen Titans. She also her last project was the 2012 TMNT show. She also did the current Voltron show, at least the newer Voltron show that was on Netflix. She's done a lot of shows, and like her name precedes her. Let's just say so. Voice direction is also top notch,
Agreed.
and so yeah, that's what I have to say about the voice acting. So, and then I also kind of want to say that for like the good for like the good first half of the show, you could say, okay, it's a very good kids show, right? Not to discredit it or something, but it's like, okay, I could say it's a passable thing. It's a great like it's a kids show, but it treats them with respect. It's smart in a way. It's a lot of interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff about it. The action is great. There's a lot of culture in there, and then you suddenly get to episode 12 with the storm, and the entire show just suddenly becomes something else.
I would agree with you, but there are
Mhm.
moments like I do agree with you, right? Like the first, yeah, I would agree with you. Like that first half or quarter of the season, right? It's definitely like, all right, yeah, this is a good show for a younger audience. Like I can see that, but there are moments in it. Like again, you mentioned it briefly, the Southern Air Temple, episode 3. Like they don't shy away from that. Like even
No.
though you because I know like there's that big like pretty popular thing that goes around, right, where like you can tell where Gyatso, right, like seeing his body surrounded by all those dead Fire Nation soldiers, right, you can probably
Mhm.
tell that man probably suffocated those people to death. Like they're not
Oh,
dead there for no reason. Like they're subtly telling you, no, like airbenders are supposed to be peaceful. That man killed some people. He killed a lot of people.
well, to be honest, just because they are a peaceful kind, because I think in this context, it's one of those, because the Fire Nation, you see how they are an empire, essentially. And also the Earth Kingdom. I think what they mean with Airbenders are peaceful is that because they are nomads, essentially.
Well,
They are meditating all the time. Yeah, and I think they mean peaceful in that sense. But and when they're threatened, he probably did a bit more than he probably wanted to.
well,
But it didn't.
it's a
But the
subtle
fight
way of
came to
showing
him.
you. It's a subtle way of showing you, right? Like Aang believes in that peacefulness, right? In that, like, no, violence is not the answer. We can't just kill people. Like, and again, it's like goes back to the whole thing of him not wanting to kill the Fire Lord and everything, right? And being kind of selfish in that
Well,
regard, and everybody telling him, no, you have to, because this is that subtle reference very early on of no, like, he's not the first Airbender to like kill people using airbending if he did it right. So like, there's precedent because you can see that his own master did do that. Whatever his reason may have been, however his master felt about it, he did do it. Like we'll never know because he's dead and gone, but he did do it, right? And here's a subtle hint that like some of the airbenders did do some like, you know, that's probably gruesome. Like let's be honest.
Yeah, and again, this is another thing that like then you get to Korra and you see some of the stuff that they do there with Urban, and it's like, oh shit, you get what I mean?
Yeah, because that's probably, again, that gives you kind of an idea of like, oh, that's probably what they did to the firebending soldiers back in the day as well, right?
But
And then
it's
you start
also
to realize
like
like,
a
damn,
thing
like
that's
airbending's kind of like deadly if someone wanted to
yeah.
be.
But I think also they are smart enough to not obviously not say what actually happened. It's like it's up for your
No, it's not.
interpretation.
Yeah, like you decide how you feel about that, because I remember some of the discourse I've seen around. A lot of people didn't think he did, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
people didn't think like, oh no, that's just where the bodies were. Like I remember like some people didn't believe that entirely, right? Because, and that's fine. You're allowed to think that. Like you're allowed to think maybe he didn't kill them. Maybe there's something else that happened there.
Yeah, because you could also argue maybe he just airbend him off a cliff or something, and he just happened to land there. That's also a possibility. You mean?
I
Another,
disagree with you, right? Like it's something that I think he
I'm
did
not
kill them,
saying
but
that.
no, I know you're not. I'm saying like I think he did kill them, but I firmly get where like it's subtle enough and it's in the background enough where you can decide for yourself how you feel about it.
And they also kind of imply that the Fire Nation doesn't necessarily think about the collateral damage in terms of their own people getting
Mm.
hurt. So there's also a good chance that
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Fully understand. Yeah, it's definitely. But again, it's just that's one of those things as to why that episode, especially coming in at episode 3, by the way. Like up until
yeah,
that
and
point, you have two
also
episodes of everything kind of being happy-go-lucky, a little bit of like, oh, Zuko, I'm after you, Aang, and I'm gonna get you, Avatar, and then we was like, all right, let's go to the Southern Air Temple. I'm gonna meet my people. Let's see the other Airbenders. And it's like, all right, it's been a
and
100 years. You're probably expecting like things probably changed. His master's probably dead and gone because he was pretty old in what we did get to see of him the little bit, right? So he's
yeah,
probably dead and gone. He'll probably be a little bit sad about that, but that's it. And then we get there, it's like, no, they're all dead. He's the last one. That's it. They're all gone.
yeah,
Like,
like
ooh,
and the
jeez.
way and like in a way you kind of need to expect it because the show is called The Last Airbender, but at the same time it's still like an whoa, that's a fifth, and especially and in another clever note, this is the first time we see Aang go into the Avatar state, and we don't, as far as I remember, they don't necessarily call it the Avatar state. Then this is not a thing that's coming into play until season two, but it's so clever that you're kind of wondering what is that. I know he uses it in the. I think he does
He
use it
uses
in
it in the
the.
fight against Zuko, but
Yeah,
like
I
it's
was
very quick. You don't get to see a ton
and
of
I
it.
also want to say he also uses it in the season one finale. But that's another thing that you don't necessarily know it's the Avatar state the first time through. It's like it's something he
Mm-hmm.
does, and you're like, whoa, like is this like an Airbender thing or is this an Avatar thing? You don't really know yet.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
I will say though something that I never got is that I know that in the Avatar state their eyes glow and everything, but why does the tattoo glow? That's something I never understood.
Because it looks cool. That's why. Fuck you.
I guess so. I guess that's the reason. It's just me being an asshole though.
No,
That
I
really
get you.
when this is my biggest problem with the show, it's good. When I need to look for stuff to make fun of, that's it. That's just me. That being said, so again, I was talking about suddenly the storm happens, like the episode The Storm, and it's like, whoa, what just happened here? When you see the
Mm.
backstory, how Aang ran away, and then you also see what happened to Zuko, that his own father gave him that skull. And again, the Fire Lord, you don't see him like he's like in the shadows, you don't see him at all, but his presence is fucking felt. Also, I had no idea this was Mark Hamill until years after.
Mm-mm. Yeah, like because it's such a different voice from him, right? As well, it's not like you would
Like
normally
later in
expect.
season three, when he's going into the fighting grounds and he goes the ooh ah, and so this is where you start hearing Joker, right?
Yeah, a
But
little bit. Yeah,
other than
he, he can't get away
that,
from it. He's that is him.
mhm.
But yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Like
well,
in season 1, season 2, like the little bit we do hear of him, I think he's in season 2 like a little bit, but like the little bit we do hear of him before we see like him fully in season 3, like if you would have told me it was Mark Hamill, I don't know if I would have believed you, right? Because it doesn't sound
Yeah,
like him.
I had no idea. I didn't even think. But and another thing in that flashback, you see Azula there, and again on the first time through, you don't even think about this girl that you see there. You don't even assume that like you think she's there. Maybe some animator was fucking around and made a bitch smile at that at this horrible thing. But then suddenly you realize this is Zuko's sister that he mentions near the end, and you're like, fuck. And it's
Mhm.
again when you look back at something, you're like, oh shit, oh shit,
And then also, right,
and
like since you mentioned
we'll get to Azula.
the juxtaposition between showing it being like Aang's backstory and Zuko's backstory, right, and how they both came to be in the places that they're at now, right? It's such a
Hmm.
it's such a good episode in setting up so much stuff in the future and how these two characters
And
are
then when
connected to
like,
one another.
and then like when they fly out of the storm, you see Zuko looking up at Aang leaving, and you see Aang looking at Zuko as he flies away. And it's like so much. There's no dialogue. There's no nothing. You just see them look at and now knowing everything that you know now, it's like the dynamic completely changed. That's like
Hmm.
whoa. Like, this is the storm is basically the episode that kind of switches this from a very good kids cartoon to whoa, this show is something else.
I agree.
And
Especially, I
ironically,
think it's
and ironically,
especially such a great episode because it does come off the back of the Great Divide, which I know a lot of
I
people.
was just about to say, ironically, it also comes right after arguably two of the least good episodes of the show.
I I personally like Jet because I love that it shows you, hey, this is war, and even though like, and these are Jet's still more or less like he's an older teenager, but he's still a young kid, and this is how he feels about the war and what he's willing to do, and it kind of shows you like this is the this is the episode that shows you like this is kind of the horrors of war, right? Like the things that people will do in order to win the war. We're going to drown an entire
That,
village of people, innocent, whether they're innocent or not, doesn't matter, right? This is just like it
in
shows
that case,
you
I
this is how
do
people
get
can
it.
feel and stuff.
And also,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
in this case, I do also just, and I also get, and they do give Jed and his crew something good to do in season two. But looking back, I just think I've seen so many episodes with that framework, and I don't
Mhm.
think they necessarily did something more that much more interesting, or with that.
No,
So,
I agree with you, and I agree with most people, especially the Great Divide. Like, I don't mind the Great Divide. I like it, but the Great Divide and Jet are definitely the two weakest episodes out of this season. I would say everything else plays way more into what comes next and like the season in general. I would agree with you in saying like these are two of the weaker episodes. I agree.
yeah. So the Great Divide is again. It's not that it's necessarily a bad episode. Just the solution for one feels like a cop out for, and also two. And you could argue that it's kind of walking into Aang's development because he's a kid. He thinks that just lying to them and no one would know the difference. Is just an easy way to get out of it. But when this is your hero and the one that's supposed to be the bridge between two worlds, it's like it feels kind of iffy.
No, I get you. I agree. Like it's definitely like I kind of like it because it's like, all right, he's kind of a child. This is kind of his. He is still young. He's still a young kid. So this is kind of how
Yeah.
he worked it out. And it's like I don't like that you did it that way, but it makes sense that you of all people did it that way. But
Yeah,
I do agree.
that's
Like it's very. It's not a bad episode, but it's still just there's stuff that's wrong with it. It doesn't feel good, right?
yeah, it's very, again,
Especially
like
coming
I
off the
said,
back of Jet.
yeah, and then suddenly you get the storm. And it's like, whoa, what happened here?
And it also
And
goes into like this thing of the Great Divide, right? It also goes into this thing of you're trying to be a bit of a kid show and teach lessons. What lesson is this teaching kids, right? Like, what is the lesson to
yeah,
take away here? Because it seems like you're saying lying's good. You should lie, and it's like maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's not a good thing. Don't learn from this. It doesn't always work
it,
out this well.
yeah. it's kind of like, hey, if you happen to be 100 years old and you'll spend a century in an iceberg, you can totally lie about an historical event and people would buy it.
It's true. Just say you're a time traveler.
Yeah,
It'll go well for you.
I have a DeLorean, don't you know?
But no, I do agree. Like these are two very weaker episodes. To then, but it's I think they definitely pulled it back with the storm, right? Like you get these two weaker episodes, and then I think, and it just sets the storm up so well,
Hmm.
which is odd considering, but it does work in its own weird way, and I think it helps in its own weird way, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and especially right after the storm, there's an episode. I think one of the episodes that like surprised me the most, the Blue Spirit,
mm,
because
it's
because
immediately
it's
after
not,
actually.
yeah, it's I said it's like
Oh
the
yeah,
next
okay,
episode.
sorry, yeah.
Because it starts out with like with this kind of like oh your traditional this kind of oh the two friends are sick, main character has to find something to save them kind of episode, just tradition again, kind of this traditional kids show. Okay, and but then you get to this entire point where Aang is trapped by Zhao, and this mysterious blue spirit saves him, and then we get to Angsys, it's Zuko, and you think he just leave him there and run, but no, he actually waits until Zuko is wakes up, and he tells him, we could have been friends if the circumstances were different, and Zuko just attacks him, and you can tell that Aang is devastated by this. Like there's this point where you think they could have been friends, they could have worked together, they could have been
Hmm.
a good team, and sudden and but no, like Zuko's honor is more important. And like, and right after the storm, right after you see his backstory, right after everything, it gets to you. It's
Hmm.
like it hits so much.
Agreed. And since we brought him up briefly, like Zhao, what a great villain for season one, right? Like he
Yeah,
works so well, and you really feel like you know what? Fuck you, I hate you.
like because if you kind of if you feel kind of like, okay, you know what, maybe Zuko deserves a bit more of a break, maybe Zuko can, I can let it slide, I like him even though he's bad, but no, Zhao is just a pure asshole. Zhao is just, you want to punch this guy.
Well, it's also good because you're like we start off with Zuko. It's like, all right, this dude's the villain, right? And
Hmm.
like, you don't quite know enough about him yet, so you're still seeing him as the villain, and then you finally get a little bit of like, I think it's when the winter solstice starts, right? You start to see. I think that's the first time we see Zhao and him and Zuko interacting. You see, Zhao's a bit of a prick. Maybe
Yeah,
Zuko's not that bad because he's at least not Zhao level bad. And
and
then you get
also,
into the storm, and you finally see, oh fuck, I like Zuko now.
yeah.
Like maybe he's not terrible. And then the blue spirit, and you're like, all right,
And
fuck you,
but
Zhao.
also the one thing that Zuko has that Joe doesn't is, one of the best things about this show, General Iroh.
Hmm. Best uncle ever.
Iroh,
No
I
uncle
I
compare.
I just want to say, unrelated. One of my friends told me that I remind her of Iroh, and I told her that's the sweetest thing you ever said to me. Thank you.
No, I loved, right, like that let me make sure. Where is it? What episode was it?
What happens in it? What?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's this, I got it wrong. It's the Southern Air Temple is the first time we see Zhao, right?
Mhm.
And I love
Yeah,
that.
and that's also the time where we are introduced to the concept of the Agni Kai.
Yes, and I love, right, that at the end of it, Zuko spares him. Zuko's walking away, and Zhao tries to do like get him in the back and everything, and you just get this brief moment of like Iroh just suddenly, you're done, get out of here,
Yeah,
just kind of throws him back, and you're like, that old dude maybe got something. Like he might be there. There's more to him than they've been letting on so far. Because you think he's again unassuming, right? And you see that little bit, and then you get a little bit later on, and you see more and more from Iroh, and you're like, damn, this dude knows how to fucking firebend.
oh yeah, no, because again, that's the thing that he might be like so calm, and why not you have some tea, that's but no, there's a reason he's general. he fucking knows his stuff. He's a badass if you just, but don't mess with him. Like, in a way, and I remember because whereas I was rewatching the show, I said that Iroh is basically this show's version of Splinter, and then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, and then it suddenly hit me that Mako actually Mako, Iroh's voice actor, actually voiced Splinter in the 2007 Ninja Turtles movie.
It works.
Like it's like it was one of those things. Like, and then it hit me for out of nowhere. Yeah, so kind of a fun connection though. So basically, yeah, I saw I was great, and I think this is the main difference between Zuko and Zhao. Zuko has Iroh, Zhao doesn't.
Mhm.
Also, and I also love that there's this episode where Aang actually meets a firebender who
The deserter,
who
yeah,
would
Jiang Jiang.
yeah who would teach him firebending, even though he didn't master waterbending yet. But it's the only chance he might have. So he tries that, and then we find out that this is the same one who taught Zhao firebending. And I love how Aang learns something by basically just making Zhao mad and causing him to destroy his fleet.
Mm-hmm.
That's brilliant. I
Yep.
I love that part. It's so good.
Because again, like you get to see, like, oh, Zhao has that. Zhao has no self control because he doesn't have that person like Iroh to help him learn that self control and everything. Jiang Jiang
Hmm.
could have been that for him, but Zhao didn't want that. Zhao didn't take that, so he's
Yeah.
never learned to control that. It's so great. It's another good one, right? Deserters, another episode I just love because you get to see, you know, we get to see like a look into firebending and how different it is and how destructive it can be, but also how, you know, and they'll build off of that later in other seasons as well, how beautiful it can be in a way as well, and how it can also do more than just destroy, right?
Yeah.
And they start that a little bit here with the deserter, but you get more of it later, especially as, you know, Zuko comes on board and Zuko becomes Aang's teacher and everything like that as well, right? It's just super
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and I kind of love that for it. And I love, like, this is probably, I think the deserter might be my personal favorite, just for like what we learn from it in regards to bending and how different it
I
is. It's very
I think
close for me.
I think to me it might be the Blue Spirit, but that
Yeah,
depends.
that's definitely high up there as well. Like, there's so, it's hard to pick like a favorite
Like,
episode, right?
for the record, for the listeners at home, let's just assume that this show has a lot of good episodes, and don't and my favorite can literally change at the drop of a hat.
We'll start talking
So,
about it. You actually, no, this one's my favorite. We start talking about another episode. Actually, no, I take it back. I like this episode more.
no, like
It's
I
so hard to
think,
pick a favorite. Picking a least
let's say
favorite probably a lot easier than a favorite.
I will say that my actual favorite episode of the show is the very final one, but we're not there yet.
Mhm.
So. Yeah. But in terms of season one favorite, again, it can change on the drop of a hat. I can tell you forever. It's hard. Don't do this to me. So,
I think it would definitely be like the Deserter, the Blue Spirit, and the Storm. Like, there's a few in there, and then maybe like Southern Air Temple or the King of Amashu. Like, it's one of those. Like, it's one of those
I
five.
like another one that I really like is Imprisoned, where we meet those Earthbenders who were captured, and like they feel demoralized, and then Katara goes in there and
I don't know why
encourages
they were
them.
so demoralized. They had him on land. I don't know why they never earthbent.
Don't fuck dare.
Yes.
Uh, you got my morale out to talk about that. Yes. And I think another one. Something, I can't believe we actually didn't mention this up until now. One of two very important things about this show. One of them is introduced in episode 3, even though we said it's a very heavy episode emotionally, and suddenly we have one of the best things about this show, Momo.
True. Momo and Appa
Momo
are like fucking great.
and Appa as well. The show wouldn't exist without Appa. Appa is great.
Literally, we would go nowhere without Appa.
We wouldn't be able to go anywhere without Appa. Appa is awesome.
Appa literally drives the plot forward at all times.
Yeah,
But no, like
but even
I love the
like
design. Like speaking of that, I love the designs of the animals in this. It feels like I know some of it takes from like some of our own stuff. Like Momo's a lemur, you can see that. But then you get to like
Mhm.
Appa, and it's like I get what you're going for here, but he's so different and so unique, right? Like so many of the animals in designed in this world, like you can tell like
Unreal
some artists had
note.
some fun, right?
Unreal note. I never heard of a bison before this show. Okay,
Fair, no.
personal thing. No, here's the thing. I never heard of a bison before this show happened, but then like out years after Avatar, I think it was a few, maybe 2 years after the entire show ended, and I thought it was just something they made up. And suddenly, I watched Hell's Kitchen in one season where Gordon Ramsay says where somebody put a salmon in the freezer instead of the fridge, and he goes, "It's like a bison's penis. What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess a bison is a real thing."
No, no, it's real.
Okay,
It's a American thing, and yeah, we don't fuck with them. They big.
yeah. No, I figured that, but again, just to think that I thought it was something that I had no idea
Huh.
existed, and then thanks to Gordon Ramsay, I learned the truth. You see, Gordon Ramsay makes Avatar: The Last Airbender better. If honestly, something from all the edits, I would love because have you seen some of those edits that put Gordon Ramsay in the MCU?
I have, yes, and they're hilarious.
Imagine if
They are
somebody
great.
somebody needs to put him in The Last Airbender. It would be amazing.
Listen, he can play the next Avatar.
Fuck yeah, let's do that. You know what? Somebody get him to it. Get him to do that. I'll be. If that happens, it will be the best show ever, bar
Mm-hmm.
none.
Mm-hmm. Fair. I don't disagree.
The sad part would be that we won't be able to focus on the actual show because we'll be too distracted by the fact that it's his voice. But whatever, I'll take it. Anywho, back to the actual show. And so yeah, so we have Momo and Appa. They're great.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the Blue Spirit, which is a great episode. And eventually, we get to where we want to go through the entire show, the Southern Water Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point where we kind of have like the last three episodes of the season. So the first one, I was again. It's one of those things where like really this show which tried to push Katara as like as equal part with with Aang and Sokka, and suddenly it's like, oh, we don't teach girls how to fight with waterbending. We teach them healing. Ha ha ha! You're a girl. You can't match me. Ha ha ha! And then suddenly the way they resolve this is actually really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. Like it's one of those episodes where it starts off and you're like kind of I'm not liking this. It's not great. And then they really bring it back well, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it takes a good turn. I think for that episode, the majority of that episode, for a good portion of the episode, I'm way more interested in Zuko's story right now than I am, what's going on with like Aang and Katara and all of that. But no, they bring it back really well for Katara and what they're doing for her story there, right? I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. And then I also love that that when we meet him in the two-part finale, Katara is suddenly his best student. Like she's actually nailing it. And I think this is a bit jumping a bit ahead here to like season two, but essentially that Aang doesn't necessarily master waterbending, but it's implying that Katara would continue to teach him because she reached master levels. That's really cool.
Hmm.
With all of that being said, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to talk about before we jump. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about. We didn't really mention Sokka, so I have a question. When he starts, hanging out with the Water Tribe princess, are you the only one who thought to yourself, "What happened to Suki?"
Um, at that point, no, because like we had her in one episode. I never thought she would come back. I thought it was like, all right, that's a little one and done thing. I get it. Like we're moving on. He's moving forward. That's fine because we'll probably never see her again. I never expected to see her again. I'll be honest. The fact that we did get to
Yeah.
see her again
So
actually shocked me more.
as soon as yeah, because as soon as they introduced this princess, I'm like, oh, okay. Guess Suki was just a thing that's never gonna be mentioned. All right, sure. And then they kill her off, and it's like, oh, okay.
Well, they don't kill her off. She just becomes the moon. It's different. She's still there around. She's still around. She's literally the moon.
Just because there's a creative way to say that doesn't mean that it's not. They wrote it off.
Listen,
Okay.
I'm not gonna judge Sokka if he wants to travel up to the moon and have some time alone with it. That's his choice. I don't know how
Honestly,
that works, but go for it, bud.
honestly, Sokka would invent a spaceship.
He probably would somehow.
Yeah. Well, and
Would it
to be honest,
work? No, but he would try.
he would try that. Um. But basically, I also enjoyed it. I think also the finale. I did kind of like grown a bit where like apparently the princess is betrothed to someone else, and this guy is a jerk, and they do like this kind of. But they don't spend too much time on it. So I'm able to let it slide. It's like it doesn't destroy anything, and
It's that
also,
C plot,
I
right?
think
Because Avatar does
and
that a lot, where you have like your A plot, your B plot with like Zuko more often than not, and you have a small C plot going on. And in this one, like your A plot's Katara and her trying to get the recognition from the master waterbender. I forget his name, or Paku. That's it. Trying to get
yes.
recognition from him and trying to make sure like, hey, I'm just as good as you are, or just as good as Aang, if not better. Like you should train me too. Blah blah blah. And then Zuko's story where it's like, Zhao finally figures out that he's the blue spirit, and Zuko quote unquote Zuko, yeah, fuck me, words. Zuko quote unquote dies, and you're like, oh shit. And then we find out it's like, oh no, Iroh's helping him,
Mhm.
get onto the ship in disguise so he can be here at the siege and everything, and some stuff going on there, right? Just and then small to the side, Sokka's just like, hey, Sokka's getting a thing for him. Go, dude. It's been a while since you had your moment. Have fun.
Mhm.
It's very small and to the side, but like it's still fine, right?
Yeah. And again, overall, we come all the way to the finale where. By the way, I think it's around that point where Aang goes to the spirit realm and he finds the spirit like that. If you make any other face, it will steal your face away, and you need to stare at it blankly. That shit is terrifying, even as an
Mm.
adult.
But it's so
That
like, man, I love the face shit they do here. It's like that makes so much sense, right? It's like you can't
yeah.
smile, you can't show any kind of like major emotion, or it's just like gone. Your face is just gone. It's like I
And
love
there's
that.
a point,
Such a neat,
and
neat
there's a point
idea.
where Aang literally shows emotion, and like it flies to him, and then just goes to like that face, and it's like that scene is like the most uncomfortable I've ever been in a cartoon. Like
Mm-hmm.
this,
And the fact
this was
it's a spider, isn't it? Right?
yeah, in a
The fact that
way.
it's a fucking spider too. It's like, yeah, no, don't like
Mhm.
spider that
Yeah.
steals your face. Nah, fuck off. Get out of here. Don't like.
So if somebody goes up to him with a Spider-Man mask, would that count?
Depends on how emotive the Spider-Man mask is, I suppose.
Okay, like so, if it's not like the one from the MCU or the games where the eyes can change and stuff.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
probably that. Yeah, it can't be too emotive, but a mask
Mhm.
might work because you
Yeah.
can't see your
So
faces. But yeah, wait,
okay. So
rules lawyering the Fae.
oh, Oh, so with all of that being said, I'm trying to think if there was anything else to just mention. Besides, I think climax for the season one thing, when they have to make the sacrifice with the princess, and the way Aang, transforms into that kind of spirit through the avatar side. That's a really cool scene. Like considering what they've been building up with the show and stuff, I think this was the best way they could have finished.
Hmm. What, like we've not even talked about it, right? Like seeing Zhao come in and like Iroh come in, everyone's there at the pond with the spirits and everything, and Zhao just kills one of the spirits, right? And just seeing
Hmm.
everything go completely dark, and just that scene with
Yeah.
just the fire going, like that was
Hmm.
when, if you hadn't by that point, like you were sold on the show in that moment, right? Like this is the
Yeah.
moment where
Like.
you're like, yeah, this is the forever show, right? Like I'm here now. You have me. You probably they probably had you before this, like with the storm and other moments, but this moment, like they nailed it. Like just everything going dark and grayscale, and just the scene and the way that looked, like man, like that was so
Mhm.
good. That was so well done.
Yeah, and even before that, I forgot to mention the fight between Katara and Zuko.
Yeah, as
Such
well.
such a great fight, especially because this is like Katara's moment where, like, yeah, she trained throughout the entire season, and now she gets the chance to prove herself. And
Mhm.
fuck, she gives Zuko a beating. Like, holy, this woman is dangerous.
Oh, it's also right. This is the first time, like up until this point, a lot of our fights haven't felt like serious, right? They've not felt like this is life or death. There's always been that
Yeah.
little bit of comedic element to a lot of the fights. You know,
Hmm.
barring the Blue Spirit, I would say is the first time where it felt a little bit like, no, this is more serious, this is more deadly. But for the most part, I would say a lot of any fights that happened fairly comedic, fairly like lighthearted in tone, in my opinion. This time
Hmm.
though, whether it's Zuko and Katara or the stuff with Zhao, it feels serious. Like you can feel all of the tension that's there. You can feel like all of the heightened emotion. You can feel like, no, this people will die here potentially, right? Like this is
Yeah.
bad.
Hmm. Yeah, this is bad. And also, I think it's also a matter of up until this point, the good guys usually won in those fights.
Mm,
Whoever you wanted to win won. And this is the point where even if overall there's no loss to the good guys, there is this thing that they still had to sacrifice the princess to save the moon. They still, Zuko did get his hands on Aang, and they need to rescue him. Like, it wasn't just a smooth sailing kind of victory. This was a legit big battle. There
mhm.
were casualties to this. There was a lot going on, and this, you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're absolutely right.
Hmm. Well, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else?
You know what? Let's ask the question. We may not be able to ask favorite episode because that's way too hard, but is there a least favorite episode from season one where you're just like, yeah, nah, this one just didn't do it for me?
Again, there's an episode that I say, oh, that didn't do it for me. But I guess the Great Divide is the one that I'm the most iffy with.
I I don't want to be like, like pick the same one or contrary. Like, I'm gonna pick this one just to be a little gremlin. No, I kind of agree. The Great Divide is probably the weakest, but it's still, as we said before, like it's still fine. It's still good. It's probably the weakest of this season. It's either that one or the Fortune Teller for me, right?
Yeah, the fortune teller is also one that's kind of,
I
I
know the
guess it's
fortune
there.
teller kind of sets up the romance between Aang and Katara, but at that point, I didn't really care about that. It's not something that I wanted to really focus on, and so
Mhm.
I could have done without the fortune teller. But it's between the fortune teller or the Great Divide is least favorite for me.
Yeah, that's kind of like, eh. So yeah, I guess so. One last thing to kind of talk about, I suppose, because we're never reviewing that movie, so might as well say, hey, we've been recording for like an hour and how long?
A little over 9 hour and 9 minutes.
So let's assume that everything we just talked about, with a bit more of a time frame, that's basically how the movie acts. That's how they did the movie. They jump around from start trying to fit everything in like less than 2 hours,
Listen,
and
it says something that we jumped around and it's still more coherent than the movie.
probably, something. Yeah, probably we did, because here's the thing: we're a podcast talking about our experiences with the show. We are not trying to retell it in an hour and a half.
Listen, I
God, that movie.
and it's even worse, right? Because like if we're talking about the movie, one of the things that bother me about it is I love movies that are so bad they're good, right? Like those terrible fucking movies like The Room and stuff
Me
like that.
too. Yeah,
But
I do too.
there's nothing in this movie that makes you feel like I can laugh at this. There's one scene that's like, and that's the earthbending scene that I have referenced more than once just to get that
And
tiny ass fucking pebble. And the fact that they're locked in a land prison. They didn't even get that right. They are locked in a
yeah,
prison
that
on land with surrounded by earth, not in a metal prison in the middle of the ocean. No, they're in a prison on the fucking land. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
that one there's that, because I remember when the film came out, and fans fans trashed it to hell and back, as they should. And then people actually came up and said, that an adaptation can be different. That stuff is. It's like, okay, fair, adaptation can be different.
mm-hmm.
I get that, but what is so good that like, people argue they get in favor of the Fire Nation needing fire to be there in order to bend it, because it's the opposite of water, so they kind of have that in common. And it's like, I could have. That's the thing, though. It's not a good change, because it makes the Fire Nation so not threatening, especially because the climax of the movie is Aang dumping water all over their fire. So he kind of so if he just has a puddle of water next to it, yeah, done. The Fire Nation is not threatening by that. With that little fact,
I agree,
it's
and I like it. I like it more that that fire comes within, right? Like it just uses like
yeah.
that. Like I love their explanation for it in the show. I get what the movie is going for, and it's like that's not a bad idea, but it just there's something that it takes away from the show, right? And it just doesn't
And then
work.
there's this entire thing with the casting, which I don't want to say necessarily racist, because an Indian guy directed the movie, but it's still like, what the fuck?
Agreed. Like no, it was
And
definitely like yeah, it was not great choices. Nothing against
and
the actors
also,
and
just
actresses. They gave their I
also
felt like they
for
gave it a
love of
shot,
God,
but yeah. Sorry.
and also for love of God, name one. Forget one scene. One shot in this movie where Aang fucking smiles. You can't.
Mm-mm.
Oh, sorry, Ong. Yeah, let's talk about that. That name.
Uh
I was.
I remember, man.
I
I remember being like younger and everyone hearing like, "Oh man, Avatar: The Last Airbender is getting a film, yo," and all of us being like excited, like that's gonna be amazing. Like, think of that. It's live action. It's a little bit different. Like we're a little bit,
like, the
eh,
teaser was
we're just
actually
getting a
badass.
film.
The teaser actually had me excited, and it's not even in the movie.
Like yeah, like we're getting a film, and everybody was so excited for it, and then people started going to the theaters, and you started hearing about it, and everybody's like, "Nah, that was shit. That was terrible. I wish I wouldn't have went. I wasted my money." Like everybody was
No,
so upset.
listen. I had a friend. I have a really close friend who was like, we were like, the Avatar guys in school. We were
Hmm.
just, every time we meet up, there's a good chance we'll bring this show up. We can have this podcast is basically me and my other friend. Just every other time we meet, we can talk about this show for hours. Okay,
Fair.
and we were so excited for that movie, right? We were so excited, and I
Hmm.
just remember that we walked out of it so fucking pissed off. We like, and the thing is that my friend, the guy, like, all he knew with M. Night Shyamalan is that he's the guy who ruined Avatar. That's the only thing he knew about him. And years after, if I through the honest trailer for the last Airbender movie, he when he found out that M Night Shyamalan is going to direct After Earth, you remember that movie with Will Smith and his son
Oh yeah.
stuck on a uh, he was actually legit excited for that movie. And as soon
Oof.
as I showed him the honest trailer and they said that he's gonna direct After Earth, and he was like, "After Earth is his movie? No, I was actually looking forward to it. How did he get Will Smith and his son for it? What the fuck?
Now
No, I can't see that now." Like I, it's rare to see this guy get mad about something. Okay, this was the first time I saw him legit mad about something when he
mm,
found out. Like this is how much the movies fucking scarred him, and I can't blame him. The movie's shit. So
to
and
be a little bit fair to M Night Shyamalan, that After Earth was a little bit more Will Smith's fault than it was his, but they
yeah,
were both to blame. But it's so
for
sad
the
too because he was such a good director as well, right? I mean, he's
like
still even now he
I,
still is.
I
He's put out recently some pretty good stuff in recent
like
years,
yeah,
but
I think that yeah, like after I'm after Earth, this is so weird to say. But like I heard that like he had one which was actually which was actually good. What was it, the meal or something?
I
I
think
don't
it was the one where like it was like the kids went to live with their like grandparents or something, and they were really weird and it's kind of creepy. It was done really well, right?
and then suddenly there was this one movie where the twist was apparently that it was a sequel to Unbreakable the whole time or something.
Yeah, like that they were doing stuff like that, and it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
like apparently, yeah, because from what I've seen, in interviews, like I don't want to say that he's a bad guy or that he's untalented because I'll defend The Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense is still a great movie,
Hmm.
but there's the point. What do you mean? It has
No, no, I
Sora from
agree that
Kingdom
I'm
Hearts.
agreeing with you.
Okay,
Like,
oh,
it's a
it has
great
Sora.
film.
It has Sora from Kingdom Hearts talking to dead people. But anyway, the point is that in interviews it seems like this kind of guy that's like that you could argue that he has some sort of an ego because he's like, oh, I think people are giving me good review because I have my own language, I have my own style, and it doesn't necessarily jive with everyone. So I guess it depends on if they get me or not. And like if I get a good review, it's like, yeah, I get a good review. But if I don't, I just know it's because they don't get me. Not to put words in his mouth, but it sounds a bit like he's a bit full of himself, but at the same time, he's also looking at the last Airbender with like, I know I fucked up with that. I
He
dropped the ball.
Well, at the time when it first came out, he was a bit more like, no, 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 you don't get it. But after like looking back now, he's very much no, I fucked up. I think he's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
I
especially
think for a time there, he definitely let the Artur go to his head a little bit because he was doing so well. And then after he had a few failures in a row, he's like, nah, I fucked up. I'm not an
the thing
Artur.
I remember though is apparently even the guy who plays Zuko in the movie is like, no, like that movie sucked. I can't. He even said that whenever he looks at that movie, he's like he looks at himself and he's like, who is this person? I can't connect to myself. It's like, wow, that's depressing. I feel so bad for the dude.
Mm.
and and then apparently Dante Basco said that the creators of Avatar told them, don't see the movie, please don't.
Fair.
I guess one more thing to say about it because I just think it's a funny story. That while the movie was playing in theaters, I happened to be at the theater, going to see another movie with a friend. And as we are getting to the cash register to buy tickets, there was a screen behind the cashier that were just playing trailers for stuff that's either about to premiere or has already premiered. And the teaser for the last Airbender movie was playing. So I was looking with a friend. I'm like, attention viewers, a trailer to a shitty movie is playing. Please avoid it. Just that kind, just generally, having fun with a friend. And then the cashier is like, are you talking about the Avatar movie? And I'm like, yep. And it's like, my boyfriend said it's good. And I'm like, I don't know your boyfriend, but I'll direct it to my psychiatrist because I'm very terrified. Took the tickets, went away.
Yeah, Yep. Agreed.
uh, Fuck that movie. Fuck that
And again,
movie.
like I said before, it's even worse because if it was like one of those it's so bad it's good films, it would at least have some merit. It would have something, right? But again, the one scene you get where you can just laugh at how ridiculous it is that earthbending scene. And that one scene is not worth that movie. I'm sorry, it's just
Yeah,
not.
like there's a point because I have two friends who we just kind of every so often we meet up to watch a terrible movie that's funny. Like we
Mm-hmm.
did like we did like the '93 Mario movie, or some last thing we did like Barnyard, which was an experience. Let me tell you,
Yes, it is.
but but the thing is that they're like, you know what? Let's do the Last Airbender because HC hates it so much, and it's like, okay, what the fuck, okay, okay, whatever. And like, okay, so there was the Airbender, like the whoa, whoa, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the point where once we get to like the and like to the Southern Water Tribe, and they're like, wow, there's like it means something that it feels like we're only like an hour into the movie and we just wanted to end already. But we also know there's only they are going to cram the last three episodes into 30 minutes. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
you know it's actually impressive that the movie can be like that. It's very impressive that the movie can do that. It's like, oh god, we are only here, and also we're here already at the same time.
Yep. Yep.
That's like it's basically this is maybe something. Maybe the movie is ahead of its time because maybe in the future this is how Wikipedia summaries would work.
Maybe. I don't know if
We
I want to
never
give it
know.
that much credit, but maybe.
Listen, if this ends up being like how Wikipedia articles are gonna be in the future, they are just gonna be mini movies summarizing a plot. You know something?
I'm not against it, but I'm against
you
it.
know how you know how people hated Psycho when it came out, and now it's like a cinematic masterpiece that everyone is talking about. Yeah.
Fair.
uh, so I guess that's all there's to say about that. Back to season one. Still amazing show. While season
Mhm.
one is the weakest, it's still an amazing season. And the fact that it's the weakest just goes to show how amazing of a show it
You know,
is.
I do have
So
one last question I'd like to throw out there for you.
yes.
We're not. I don't. We're not going to talk about it with the lead up to the live action show. We're focused on the first, Avatar: The Last
Yeah.
Airbender show. But
Mhm.
season one of Korra and season one of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which one do you think is
Uh,
stronger?
mhm. I'll tell you what. It's To be honest, the first thing to say is it's kind of hard to compare because it's like if you're asking me to compare Lord of the Rings to the Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
Like
Fair.
we're talking about two different things here,
That's
but
fair.
in terms of us looking back, I think Torah's biggest problem is that there's not enough screen time.
That's fair.
I'll also say though that in a way, Korra season one is a bit more standalone-ish compared to the rest of the show.
Mhm.
So also in that sense, you're asking me about part one of a trilogy, then a standalone story. I'm also not really sure about. But overall, though, I'll say Avatar: The Last Airbender is stronger because I'm not feeling like. Maybe there are episodes that I would be like, okay, they're not as good as that. But Korra is, something. Someone on YouTube is not too long ago. I've seen someone who basically summed up the differences between the two shows really well, and I think it holds true. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a simple show that has a lot of deep meanings beneath the surface.
Mhm.
The Legend of Korra is a show that has a lot of interesting and deep ideas at the forefront, but they deal with them in a shallow way.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. I,
So I think this is gonna carry over to, if I have to compare the first to like the first season of each. I think overall Korra might have more interesting ideas and dilemmas, but in the bigger picture, The Last Airbender presents himself in a more interesting way, and it's not as rushed. It has its time. It's just an overall better made show. And for the record, I know that Nickelodeon fucked the creators hard
mm,
with Korra. I am aware, but at the same time, the show that we have right now is the show that we got. So that's what I'm judging.
that's fair. That's absolutely fair. And for the most part, I would agree. I think personally, for my own personal preference, I do prefer Korra season one a little bit more than Avatar season one. But that's just
Mhm.
personal preference and just like things I like more and what it's doing.
Because I will say, in terms of like a character that I connect with more, I think Korra appeals to me a bit more than
I would
just
agree.
in terms of a character archetype, though. Not that she's necessarily a better written character or something.
I think I think Korra has a more immediate appeal, right? Aang is very much like a build up. Like he may not appeal immediately, but as you get to know him more and as you get to see more of his journey, he starts to appeal more and more as the show goes on, right? Korra
Yeah.
very much you like her and she appeals to you very quickly and very early
Because
on.
I also notice that, when people talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's like, oh yeah, Zuko, Tara, and, they'll mention Aang. Don't get me wrong, they'll obviously mention Aang, but he's not the first name that people will probably think more about Zuko
I think
or
yes,
Katara or some
Zuko and
or
Katara
Azula.
definitely the names
Yeah,
that come up first. Yeah.
yeah, and when people talk about Korra, Korra is usually at the forefront. The entire show can lie around the fact if you can live and die on the fact that you either like or dislike Korra.
Hmm.
So that's also an interesting like bit of discussion about the two, but that's no here no there.
That could be its entire own video, and maybe it will be in the future.
Mhm. I'm going to say this: we are not gonna get to Korra right after we do the live action one, but one thing at a time.
Cough, cough.
So to just
We'll wait.
hmm?
Cough, cough. 20th anniversary, maybe. Then
Hmm.
you'll get a whole year. Nah, maybe we'll see. But yeah,
you know
it's
that
definitely interesting.
technically, Korra is now 12 years old, right? We're not gonna
Fuck
wait that.
me. Fuck
Yeah,
me. Why am I so
Mhm.
old?
Tell me about it.
But no,
So,
this is a great season to start off with. Like it definitely there's so much build up here, and it's definitely one of those things of like it's so good, and it honestly, in my opinion, set the standard for a lot of stuff that came after it.
definitely, we're talking about a show that's really influential about that. And just a very well made show altogether. Like there are some stuff that people look back and it's like oh, it pioneered this thing, but now looking back, it's not as good as it was back then. But no, Avatar still holds up wonderfully.
Hmm. Agreed.
With that being said, that's all for this episode of The Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. What do you think about Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 1? About the movie, which is terrible? And do you have any comparisons to Season 1 of Korra if you want to go that far? You can tell us all about it in the comment section below on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with capital B, capital C, and on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team. So until Book 2, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.